Our first topic is phonetics and phonology of the English language, which means we are going to talk about English pronunciation. About the contents of the lesson, first I'm going to tell you about how we humans create sounds. Then we will go over the most basic rules of English pronunciation and how to write pronunciation down. And finally, we will look at some of the most common pronunciation problems and errors that are often made by people whose first language, the L1, is Spanish. Okay, first let's look at the creation of sounds. Just like all other processes, sound creation is directed by brain. There is a number of brain centers that are responsible for sound creation and processing. You don't have to learn these. The picture is there just so you could see them. But if you are interested in the details, feel free to contact me because I have extensive materials on the topic. Now, brain uses various organs to make us create sounds with which we communicate, or in other words, talk. These organs used for talking are called articulators, or organs of articulation. You can see most of them on the picture. And we divide articulators into 4 different groups. The first are the respiratory organs, the lungs, and trachea, and these are mainly used for breathing. Then we have the resonators, which are the cavities, the nasal cavity, the oral cavity, and the pharyngeal cavity. The cavities are there to make sounds more prominent or louder. It works similar way in musical instruments. For example, in guitar, the body of the guitar is the resonator. Then we have the phonatory apparatus, which are vocal folds. And vocal folds are actually the only organ that is specifically focused on sound creation. And last but not least, we have the modulating organs, which are the organs that make some of the last changes to sound, such as lips, teeth, tongue, alveolar ridge, the palate, hard in the front, soft in the back, and the uvula. Now, again, you don't have to memorize these. However, knowing which parts to use will help you pronounce new sounds. So underneath the video there is a link to a picture of organs of articulation, which will help you understand later parts of the video. Please bring the picture to class with you, either print it out or download it into your phone or tablet. Now we will look at some general rules of pronunciation in English. First of all, let's go over the English alphabet. I believe you already know it, but a little review never hurts. And it might help if you try to repeat the sounds after the recording. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Unfortunately, it's a little more complicated in English than a simple alphabet. In words, the pronunciation is not just about the letter itself, but it also depends on what goes before it and what goes after it. This is not so common in Spanish, but it actually does exist. For example, letter G is pronounced as G in gracias, but H in Argentina or genil. Underneath the video there is a link to the basic rules of pronunciation, You should know them already, but if you are not sure, just check them out. English is not a phonetic language, so the spelling of words and their pronunciation are different. So how do we non-natives find out the actual pronunciation of an unknown word? Well, fortunately, we are able to write sounds down, and for this we use the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA, which is the alphabet of basic sounds. It looks like this. Don't panic, please. The good news is you don't have to memorize this. I know it looks complicated, but I am sure you have seen this before. When you open a dictionary, next to every word, there are always those funny signs, usually in brackets or slash brackets. Well, these signs are from IPA, and we are going to learn to read them. In general, we divide spoken sounds into two big categories. The vowels are the sounds in production of which the air flows freely, while in production of consonants, it is obstructed or stopped somewhere on the way. First, let's look at the vowels. In English, we have three types of vowels. The first type of vowels are the one-sound vowels, or monophthongs. There are 12 of them. The E, like in sheep, I, like in ship, U, like in good, U, like in shoot, E, like in bed, like in teacher, like in bird, O, like in door, O, like in on, A, like in far, A, like in up, and A, like in cat. To make learning the pronunciation of vowels easier, we use the so-called vowel diagram, which you can see on the right side. It looks horribly complicated, but it's actually quite simple. Basically, the diagram shows you the position of tongue when creating each vowel, as depicted on the picture on the left, how high or how low it is, or how far to the front or how far to the back. Then we have the two-sound vowels, or diphthongs, and there are 7 of them. The ear, oor, a, I, oi, ow, ow. The examples include a, like in take, I, like in buy, oi, like in boy, ear, like in fear, like in care, ow, like in go, oor, like in poor, and ow, like in cow. Again, the vowel diagram shows their pronunciation, where they start and where they end. Finally, we have the three-sound vowels, or triphthongs. There are 5 of them, and all end with the sound, or schwa. So we have aye, like in a layer or player. Then we have aye, like in tire or fire. We have oye, like in employer or soya. We have hour, like in power or shower. And we have ower, like in slower or lower. Let's move on to the consonants, the sounds in which the airflow is obstructed. We have p, like in pill, b, like in bill, m, like in mill, f, like in feel, v, like in wheel, th, like in thigh, v, like in thy, sh, like in shy, j, like in measure, j, like in Jill, ch, like in chill, z, like in zeal, s, like in seal, n, like in nil, D like in dill, T like in dill, K like in kill, G like in gill, N like in ring, H like in heel, L like in leaf, R like in reef, Y like in you, and W like in witch. So far, we've been mostly talking about general stuff. Now, we will look at some pronunciation issues and errors that are often made by people whose first language is Spanish. First, we have the schwa sound. The sign is like on the screen. The sound of schwa is This is actually one of the most common sounds in English, and it's not really that difficult to make. Basically, you need to relax your tongue, open your mouth about halfway, and just put a short sound to it. Try it out. Got it? Okay. In British English, schwa is very often used at the end of the word, a bit like in Grenadian accent, where the last sound of the word can be swallowed or not pronounced. In British English, the last sound is often replaced by schwa, especially if it's an R. Schwa can also be used in place of other sounds. Another tricky sound for Spanish speakers is h. The problem here is that h does not exist in Spanish language. It's pronounced in a similar way to schwa, but the back of the tongue pulls back. Everything else is relaxed, just like in schwa, and of course there is sound. Try it out. H. Let's try with minimal pairs now. Hit, it. Harm, arm. Hat, at. Another tricky part of English pronunciation are the long vowels. In Spanish, long vowels do not exist. There are accented vowels like María, canción, or Londres, but the accent is more about the stress than about length of the sound. In English, each of the 6 short vowels has its longer version, and we know they are long by the sign of colon that is used as a symbol of the long vowels. So on the vowel chart, we have E, U, O, A, and for E, we use a special symbol, A. Let's try with minimal pairs again. Try repeating after the recording. A, cat. A, cat. I, bin. E, bean. O, don. O, dawn. U, full. U, fool. E, ben. E, ban. F, fur. The next ones should be easy. You just need to remember them. If something is spelled with double L in English, we simply read it as L. There is no difference in pronunciation of double L and simple L. There is one exception. It's the so-called silent L, which means the L, double or simple, is not pronounced at all. Another important difference between English and Spanish pronunciation is that in English, B and the V sounds are different. In Spanish, these two are so similar, they are considered the same sound. But in English, if it's written with B, the sound is B. It's a bilabial sound, which means the obstruction of airflow is formed by upper and lower lips touching. And if a word is written with V, the sound is V, which is labiodental, in which obstruction is formed by upper teeth touching lower lip. Another difference between English and Spanish pronunciation is about words which start with sound S. In Spanish, if S is followed by a consonant, E will usually be put before it, creating words like especial, Eslovaquia, estructura, estación. In English, even these words simply start with sound S. Just don't put the E before the S and you will be fine. Try repeating these words. Stephen, special, strange, sponge, Slovakia, state, skiing, statue, station, sport, smell, school. Okay, let's get back to more tricky ones. The next sound that we will talk about is Z. It's another one of those that do not really exist in Spanish, at least in this sharp form. Z is pronounced in a similar way to S, but it's voiced, so the tip of your tongue will touch lower teeth, mid part of tongue will touch the palate, and you'll put sound to it, making your vocal folds vibrate. You can actually feel this if you put your fingers on your neck and try to make it vibrate. Zzz. Then we have the sh and j sound. First of all, s and sh are different. Sh and j are actually pronounced almost the same way, except one of them is voiceless, which means your neck won't vibrate because the vocal cords won't vibrate. And the other, j, is voiced, which means your neck is going to vibrate if you put your fingers to it. In both of them, the tongue is raised, its sides touch the alveolar ridge and hard palate at the same time, but air escapes in between and creates friction. As I said, sh is voiceless, j is voiced. To make it easier for you, I think you actually know the sounds. Sh is very often used in Cadiz, and je is very common in French, in words like Jacques. Okay, then we have the sound j, which is a bit like d and je combined. Again, tongue touches the alveolar ridge. It's similar to Spanish double L or epsilon y, especially in Latin American pronunciation, I believe. And in English, it's one of the most frequent sounds. J is the general pronunciation of letter J in words like jam, Justin, or jelly. Then we have the English R, the soft R, which is probably one of the most tricky English sounds in general, mostly because it's pronounced in very different ways, even by the native speakers themselves. Now, in Spanish, R is sharp, like R. In English, both single R and double R are pronounced in a soft form, with soft palate raised, the tip of tongue placed close to the back of the alveolar ridge, but not really touching it, and air escaping freely. To make things a little more complicated, sometimes the R's in letters are not pronounced at all, but replaced by schwa in words like work, or transferred, or argue. A similar sound is perhaps found in Spanish when you have only a single R in spelling in words like pero. Then we have the n sound, which is produced with back of tongue touching the velum, the soft palate, and the soft palate is lowered and air exits through the nasal cavity. It's a bit like placing your tongue into position for k, but saying n. Now, in Spanish, the n is usually sharp, but similar phenomenon does exist. For example, in word pongo, where the n is also kind of softened. The next common issue is the pronunciation of letters th, which can be pronounced as th or as the. They are both pronounced more or less the same way, in which the tongue stretches to the front and the tip almost touches the upper teeth. Now, th is a bit like Spanish pronunciation of the letter Z in words like Velázquez, or in English words like thick and method. On the other hand, the letter the is voiced, so again you have the vocal cords and therefore your neck vibrating if you touch it, and it can be found in words like this or other. And the last issue that we are going to cover today are the consonant clusters, or in simpler words, more consonants in a row. In Spanish, consonants and vowels usually alternate, which makes Spanish a very musical language with regular rhythm. In English, on the other hand, 3 or 4 consonants in a row are very common. Basically, what you need to learn is not to put a vowel sound between the consonants and just try to read them as consonants. Let's try it with a couple of words. Try repeating after the recording. Breakfast, cornbread, contract. And to wrap it up, just a piece of advice. If you want to improve your pronunciation, the best thing that you can do is listen to the English language a lot, so your brain learns the proper pronunciation and then you can reproduce it in speech. Thank you for your attention and see you in class.